Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. My name is Cody. We are back after a little, like 1 weekish off to spend with the holidays, but we are back with Noah and Dan this week. Noah, how has your FAB related break been? Have you actually been playing any games? Are you doing something else?
I have played 3 games. They were random 2 a.m. after being fed up with PoE2 and losing at trials. I booted up some games of KO Commoner because I keep bringing that deck to tournaments thinking I'm going to register it for some side events and I never do. But I think it's good and I win with it when I play with it on Talishar. We have another member of the podcast who's just joined. um, but yeah, so I played those games. But other than that, I've just been um, speculating, thinking about what's going to come out in the hunted and hoping I can play one of the new decks.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been pretty light for myself on this side. But Dan, you just got back from an armory. We're
I
actually
did.
recording this on Monday. How has, besides the armory, how has your FAB break been?
Yeah, it's been nice. I took like a solid, I think it was 2 weeks of like actually just no flesh and blood. I really needed it. I was pretty burnt out at the end. I was like, I tried to get out of Chicago. I don't think I told that story on the pod. Like I didn't want to go, and then I got pretty sick the week before, but I had like non-refundable flights and stuff. So I was like asking people on the team if like they'll buy out my hotel room and like cancel their cancelable one. But I was due for a break. I enjoyed it a lot, but like every day that I don't play Flesh and Blood, I want to play Flesh and Blood more the next day. So I finally hit that breaking point. So I played Armory tonight. Um, but there was one exception to not playing, which was my wife and I, we don't have kids yet. So we usually have to like drive around to all the other family during Christmas time. So we set aside like a weekend where we do our own Christmas and we just like stay inside and like play games, watch movies, and hang out together. And this time, this was this past weekend, she finally wanted to learn how to play Flesh and Blood. So I played one game of Flesh and Blood, which was teaching her, and it went not horribly, which is a huge
Oh,
win.
not horribly. Okay,
She
okay.
was even
I
down
think you're
to
gonna
play
say
it
not
again. She
great.
said, "No, it went pretty well." We booted up. She liked Aurora more than Terra, so we booted up, and we watched Sam teach us how to play the Aurora deck, and it went pretty well. They don't cover how to play the game there, so then that was on me. But it actually went pretty well. She had fun, but I could tell she was mentally taxed. I was mentally drained from playing that one game. Flesh and Blood is hard, but that was a highlight. And then Armory tonight was fun, super chill. We had 11 people I think come out, which I think is pretty solid for the time of year, and we've just had that consistently for the past like 4 or 5 months. A lot thanks to the work Dalton did in the community. So that's been sick. I won, but it was the 5th Monday of the month, which meant I got no Armory promos. Oops.
Oops.
Should have played the other ones.
Well, hopefully, come 2025, that'll be different, right?
Oh, I can't wait for jump packs.
Yeah, jump pack's been great.
I don't care what's inside.
It's at least will be something unknown. So it'll be fun to do. Yeah, all I did was play Armory. I have not played the game outside of that at all. And at the Armory, I brought like the worst deck you could possibly ever imagine. It was like Riptide CYB 74 card, one of every card you can imagine pile. That was running like Deadwood and the bow no one ever plays, so I could put aim counters on stuff. And I think I went 1-2 at Armory. It was terrible. But I had fun resolving traps. It was just not as fun when everyone has Cosmic Awakening. And so like I'm sitting down, I'm like, I got this. And then it's like new with Cosmic Awakening. Okay, I don't got this. That's a little too hard.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of been something I struggle with. So this is your coping mechanism is like when there's no big event to prepare for, you're still like unsure about a new set. You just like show up with some random pile to Armory. This is
yeah,
like what you do in the like off time.
yeah, that's typically what I do. When I have nothing to practice for, I play something fun. Right now, it's just been like every deck I can shove CYB into. So every time I go to Armory, I'm just like new deck with CYB. So like Verdant CYB is probably this week. When I get all the cards in, I sat down like last week and I was like ordering all the cards I was missing from like the last like 3 sets. And I just keep getting messages on Discord from random people like, "Hey, thanks for buying from me." Like,
Oh, dude, that's my favorite. When I get the TCG player thing and it has like a little handwritten thing at the top, like, "Oh, thanks for your order." It's like, oh, it's so nice.
Yeah, I forgot to
I
mention.
didn't realize I bought from like Fino and James. James was like, "Hey, thanks for the order."
Nice. No, I forgot to mention what I played tonight too. I had like the same mindset. I was gonna break out like Vincent or something fun. But like I've genuinely enjoyed the Zen deck quite a lot, and I haven't played it in a few weeks now, and it's gonna LL pretty quickly. Like time's kind of ticking on the deck. So I brought Zen. But I told myself I would sub 2 10-foot talls in every matchup. That'd be kind of my fun for the night. But then round 1 I play against Kano. And I'm like taking it, like, can I play this card? Like, it's pretty good for closing, I guess. But it's just like so unplayable otherwise. So I didn't play it there. But then round 3 for the 3-0, I pair into Azalea, which is like the only reasonable time to play this card. So that was funny.
That's funny.
I won with it technically, but I didn't need it. But it was the last card that was played, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm just
I don't know how
excited to
relatable
play again.
that problem that I have is.
What is that?
Of like when it's an off season, it's just super hard to be motivated to like keep iterating on a deck. Just because I'm like, what's the point of this? Like I'm iterating on this to grind Talishar or play locals. Like it's not.
So I'm the same way. But my slight motivation tonight was that the last time I was at Armory 3 weeks ago, there was like 5 Jarls. And I think that's like kind of a tough matchup for Zen.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought 10-foot tall might legitimately be a thing for that matchup. This is what I do. When we have a bad matchup, I just slam 10-foot tall as like my starting point, like to just fix it. But then
And so
everyone
you
switched
just-
off of Jarl and played like Kano and Aurora and like their funny decks.
Your goal is essentially just to store the knowledge in your head of like, okay, if there happens to be a meta where there's lots of Jarls, then, and I'm playing Zen, then I want this card. Or
Yeah, like I don't have a game plan right now for that matchup.
Mhm.
So I was hoping I'd play that tonight. That was like part of the motivation to bring Zen.
I see.
See, Noah, when
but
you
that
don't
didn't
have
happen.
any decks that you like
Mhm.
for the last year, every time you don't have to play a competitive deck, you actually enjoy just playing random decks that you might slightly enjoy. And that's kind of how it's been. Almost every deck I've registered or have had to put in, hundreds of games into, I don't actually like playing. Like, I don't like playing Zen. I like some of the game plans. I like some of the things. I like playing a deck that's good. Like, that's the stuff I get enjoyment out of. But, like,
Yeah.
I don't really like playing Zen.
Wait, can I tell one more story?
Yeah,
No.
go ahead.
I don't know.
Round 2, I played against a Prism. They went second and they opened with a 4-card 20. They're playing like the +2 gloves and Terror Edition and all this. I do like a pretty good Transcend turn, and then I draw into double Chi, block hat, Cosmic for 20. After they flipped their -1 Herald or -1 Angel and attacked with it. It's pretty sweet.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good. But yeah, so every time there's not like a major, I just play random piles because sometimes something good comes out of them. Like I'm either going to bring like Verdance or Vincent this Thursday.
So yeah, I have like no motivation to play random piles
Yeah,
because I get like nothing out of it typically, other than realizing I had no fun because I brought a bad deck.
Yeah, my whole fun in FAB is like the journey of optimizing a list for an event. So like I guess I could theoretically like min max the locals I'm gonna go to, be like, oh yeah, I know there's like 3 prisms there, so let me try to make some cheesy anti-prism deck, and that could be an element of fun. But yeah, for me it's more just about like the list optimization and less about like the actual moving around of paper on playmat.
Well, I'm playing decks that I think could potentially be good at some point.
Mhm.
And I think it's worth spending time by myself with no reps building a deck and then going and like playing it. Like I like flexing that muscle.
No, I
think
agree
it's
with
fun.
that.
And so like I think Verdance has potential to eventually be good. So, and I also actually like the Verdance deck from when I was playing it. It's just like unplayable right now, right? But everyone's kind of not playing Enigma at my locals. Like I stopped playing and the other couple people stopped playing Enigma. So like people can play real decks again. And then like Vincent's like pretty close. It feels like to being a real deck with some consistency issues. I think it needs to be explored some more, but we'll see what happens there.
Dude, I thought
also
about
can-
playing that deck like every Monday that I skipped. I'm like, oh, I should build Vincent and bring it. I was like, wait, how do I get action points though? I have to use a whole card. Like I'm not doing this.
And Riptide feels like it should be good eventually as well. Like it has traps, it has good arrows, it has all this good stuff. It's just like never just quite not there. So it's typically I just like bring a deck that I think might be good later and I should get some reps and some familiarization with.
I agree with that. I want them to be
but I
like
enjoy
flushed
that.
out though.
No,
Like I don't want to play these like fringe decks and like be coming up with game plans and like strategies
find all that
into like a
fun.
meta that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I find that fun though. It's not
Yeah,
the meta
I'm just
doesn't
saying what
have
I
to
like.
exist. Yeah. The meta doesn't have to exist. I'm just like taking a deck that hasn't been touched a lot and be like, okay, what can I do with this? Like what
Yeah.
shenanigans can we make happen? And sometimes they're gold and sometimes they're trash.
No, I just can't like
Yeah.
bring myself to solve a deck for like a dead format.
I don't know. I just don't look at it that way. Because like
Mm.
I'm playing CYB Riptide. That is terrible in this format. I'm solving for a future format. Like now I have CYB 24 pile Riptide experience, if that ever becomes relevant.
That makes sense. I think I just use like way too much of my mental energy when I play card games. So like to give some space to a fringe deck like that I might never play is just so minus for me personally.
I think it's fun. I like building the deck, like not physically
That's fair.
putting the cards together. I hate that. But I like sitting down and just like imagining the deck and then like putting it together.
Yeah. See, I get to your stage 1 of imagining the deck, but then the step 2 of actually putting it together in paper and going to play is where you lose me.
You should go play. I just
really should.
I just almost always go play. I feel like I listened to that podcast with Michael Fing in it like a long time ago where he said
I remember that one.
kind of your responsibility to go to your
Is that on
locals.
Fresh and Buds, I think?
Yeah, he just said like you should just clock in at your locals every week. Like that's kind of your responsibility as like a known person. And I just kind of take that seriously and I just almost always go to my locals. The only times I don't is sometimes around big events I don't go.
Yeah, we
Like,
never talked
the
about that,
week
Cody,
before,
but
the week
Michael
after.
inspired me too on that cast. I was like, you're right. I should just go every week.
So I go almost every week. So
Mine's tough because it's on Mondays. So it's
tisk
like,
tisk on
no,
you.
this
You
is
should
actually
go.
very convenient timing because this is like the New Year's episode, which means I can make it my New Year's resolution to go to
There it
as
is.
many armor events. It's like we planned this.
Yeah. There's
There we
also
go.
like other things outside of that I like to work on because like I think Dan and you and I talked about trying to be focused in games that have no like don't matter.
oh God.
So like
After you missed off it, you mean?
yeah, but it's the same thing as like it starts at the armory level. Like being able to go
I agree.
and sit down at like an armory and then like take the game seriously while you're playing it. It's like it's actually rather hard.
Yeah, it's like what we
at least
preach. You want to have the same routine every game you play, right? Ideally.
Yeah. And I think it's like it's a really good way to flex that muscle of like this game in front of me does not matter. Like there's nothing about this game matters, but I'm going to make this game matter in my head. And you're like flexing that muscle is like a good thing for you to do yourself every week. If you
Yeah, I
start it
completely
with that
agree.
type of
Important to balance like making sure everyone's enjoying the game that you're playing.
You're having fun. By seriously, I mean like you're tracking their pitch. Not like you're holding them to the rules, but like you're actively tracking their pitch. You're actively tracking your pitch. You're trying to play properly. You're paying attention to what your opponent's doing. You're thinking about like they played this thing, so what might they do? Not just like autopilot put cards on table, right? Like which you can easily do at an armory.
Yeah, and I was talking about this with Lucas too. I think it's actually optimal to have like a list of things that you want to make sure you're doing during a game. And then like you're saying, practice that in armory and like even online testing setting. Just make sure you're doing this checklist every turn, every game you play, and then check after, make sure you did it.
But that's how you expand your fatigue levels. Like if you're doing it naturally, like if you're tracking their pitch naturally, then it's not exhausting to track their pitch because like you're expecting yourself to always be doing it. And like it stretches the amount of bandwidth that you can have while you're playing the game. And if you flex that muscle over and over again, then it becomes less exhausting to do these things during an actual game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
then
Like the more in person play, the better.
Yep.
Yeah, then you can be more like friendly too in a real match where you don't have to be like so sweaty. You can like actually communicate with your opponent, especially if you're practicing this at an armory setting where you should know a decent amount of the people because they're regular participants. So you can like see how good you can track pitch, like you're saying, while being engaged with a conversation or while like just fraternizing with the local people. I think that's a skill that definitely comes up at tournaments, especially when you start getting later and later. You start playing against more and more people that you know. So like being able to be friendly with a person while like going try hard mode, I think is a good skill.
Yeah, those are all the things that I try to do at a local armory, to make it worthwhile for going. Besides just going for the community, right?
Mm-hmm. That's also why I don't like bringing fringe decks that I don't have game plans figured out for already. Because then that's all I'm thinking about, and I can't do these like
That's why I
other
love
things,
it.
you know.
I'm like trying to stretch that muscle. Like I'm trying to think about what could be in
Oh.
my deck. What can I do?
I have so little muscle
in this matchup
for all of that.
But that's the point.
My head hurts just thinking about this.
You have to exhaust that muscle.
No,
so
I don't,
that it
because
gets better.
I can front load the prep, and I don't have to do that during the event, and I can just do the other things.
Maybe this is why you get tired from draft, because like those games are like what I'm doing with like rogue decks, like because this a draft deck is a deck you drafted.
Oh, I don't get tired during draft.
Wait,
Wait, that's not why I've had some negative draft performances. That's because my prep was lacking.
Okay. I just, you're the one who complains that you're tired at every event, but these are like, I think these are actually decent exercises to like have to really use a bunch of brain power while you're playing the game. Maybe that'll help. So the other things will be easy. Like this is like hard mode, and then you go to a tournament and you're like, this is so easy. I know everything to do. Like I don't have to think about any of this stuff.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a checklist right after this.
Perfect. I'm just trying to help you because
I'm
event,
only trying to argue against solving a deck on the fly on top of doing all the other routine things you should be
I think
doing.
that's great. I think that's good practice.
In some
it's
spots,
also good practice because
it's fair.
What if you do come into an event and you're actually underprepared? Like we thought that it was going to be new Zen Enigma meta, but the meta is actually Riptide and Azalea, and Ranger's like super busted. You're going to have to come up with some game plan on the fly. And Cody is so prepared. He's been doing this from jump. So it can help if you, you have a wrong meta assessment and we end up pairing into a bunch of these decks that we hadn't thought were going to be real. It's unlikely, but it's possible, right?
No, I think that's valid for some people.
Like,
I think I just like know my weaknesses, and I know that I have to get my prep right to do well.
You could also just hit the bad end of variants where you're hitting like the two Riptides that are in the room, the two Boltons that are in the room, and you're like,
well, that's like the best part of Army, right?
Like,
you play against the French decks that like you're not getting reps from a tournament, right?
Okay. I think we can go to the main topic now. That was a very long intro. We actually do have a main topic, which is trying to identify when you're behind in a matchup or ahead, and how you should adjust your game plan accordingly. I think overall this skill is very important because it should impact a lot of your decision making, and this is like pretty, I think, under talked about and underutilized. It does typically take a lot of games to figure this out for most people. I mean, I'm one of those people who takes a lot of games to get a good sense of this. Some people do not need that many games. But ultimately, your risk level that you're taking throughout the game and your decision making around armor and when to use cards and when to save cards should most of the time be being made around, am I behind or am I ahead? And to varying degrees. I'll give a concrete example and then we can kind of talk about the topic a little bit. But one of our Majestic Squires from our premium Discord, they get to submit a VOD review like once every month. They submitted one of the VOD reviews and I was looking at the review. They're playing against Victor as Zen. And for most part, the game's going fine. They get later in the game where a lot of their combo cards are gone. And they have their whole armor suite up still, which is great. And the health is, they're a little behind in health. So at this point, they're like a little bit behind in the game. They're basically almost out of chase lines. I think they have one chase line left. And so they're a little bit behind. And then on one of the turns, it looked like he probably didn't realize where he was at in the game. He didn't know how behind or ahead he was. And since the deck was getting small, which is part of the game plan for when you're playing Zen, you want the deck as small as possible so that you can draw into Cosmic Awakening. But decided to put all of his armor in front of an attack, draw the card, and went from slightly behind because of this decision, went to cannot win the game anymore, essentially. And that was just simply because, and I've been there, this is a thing that I did all the time before Dan yelled at me about how to play the matchup, was I would just be like, I'm out of threats. I only have one threat left. I got to shove everything in front of this one attack so that I can play the game again. And it's like, you don't actually have to do that. Like, you're not actually that far behind. It's like a skill that like eventually after Dan yelled at me about it enough, I was able to figure out how to do it. And it was just like, that one decision went from you can still easily win this game to you can absolutely never win this game again. And it's like, and I talked about this in the VOD review, which I think it was, pretty helpful. And then it was just like, it's one of those things where if you just have that ability in that matchup to judge where you're actually at in the matchup, you never make that decision. That decision never crosses your mind as like a thing that you need to do, and you're able to avoid just completely taking the game into a completely lose situation. And I see this all the time. This is very common, right?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's definitely
I mean,
a
neither one
common
of us are
thing and
going
an
to disagree
important
with
thing.
Yeah. I was saying that's like an example of
Yeah.
like when not knowing
Yep.
if you're behind or ahead or not can, lead you to make decisions that feel correct in the moment, but they're not correct overall to what the game looks like. So
Yeah.
like what are like some, good ways, I guess, to look at if you're actually behind in a matchup or not? I think number one is threat density, right?
Yeah.
So it's knowing what your actual threats are into the matchup, and then what their actual threats are into you, and like how many of these are left for either of you to look at or to
Yuanji
actively
was
draw.
mentioning this actually in the Discord the other day, talking about like hallmark of great player is just having like a intuitive understanding of watching how the game's going from both sides, assessing the state of the graveyards and what's been pitched to see who's ahead in terms of threats left in deck. But I think the other one too is the armor situation. Like you mentioned, having the full suite of armor means the player in question is only slightly behind, because the armor isn't just worth like what the printed value on it is. Like for example, if I'm playing into like New or Azalea as Viscerai with Face Purgatory, I may be behind like 8 to 10 life, but if I still have my whole suite of armor, then I'm representing defense that when a normal person attacks with a persuasive prognosis and you have no armor, right? That's usually going to be getting a whole card, plus they're probably gaining a life off of the block. But when you have an armor, that 1 point is essentially worth like 3 to 4. So even though I'm down 8 to 10, you can figure Face Purgatory is worth like 5. My gloves blocking, my shoes blocking, my tunic blocking is all worth uh, some number more than what the printed value is, and they have no armor. So like maybe I'm actually kind of ahead or even with them, so I don't need to make a riskier play because I have this like fallback mechanic on my armor that will help ensure the turn that I'm going to turn the corner and become decisively ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Especially in like that matchup, especially against New, the ability to just shove like one armor in front of like a prognosis instead of a card, and because then if you get blown out on top of that, it's just the card you would have given anyway. If you get blown out after you blocked with one card, then it's an extra card that
Mhm.
you probably never wanted to give. And the difference for a lot of decks between a 3-card hand and a 2-card hand are probably massive, as far as how much you can punch back for. So that like extra piece of armor is a whole card plus sometimes a second card, is almost in like a dirty math kind of way to look at it. But like that's like a pretty big deal. Things to keep in mind. But also like, when you're playing as a guardian, knowing did they pitch a pummel? Like when you see a pummel get pitched, you go, one, you need to know that's going to be in second cycle if you ever get there. Most of the time, you're not getting the second cycle, so it doesn't matter. But what it does matter is they can't have that pummel now for like the top part of the game, which is, really helpful for where you have to go. If they've pitched no pummels, you've seen no pummels, and you suspect they're probably running pummels. Like it would make sense that they're running pummels, and you're like, they're gonna have a pummel in the next like one of their next 3 hands. Like it's 100% going to. It's like now something that you have to take into account for what you're going to be doing on a turn-to-turn basis. Do you need to now be way more aggressive because you can't survive that pummel, or do you have the D-reacts that you need to look to set because maybe a pummel's coming, et cetera, et cetera? These are like different decisions that you can make as well, like knobs you can turn on what you need to do on a turn-to-turn basis.
If you have no thoughts, Dan, I thought of another good example.
I have so many thoughts. I'm just struggling to make it like cohesive. So I'm just like working it out in my
I'll
brain
ramble
right
on
now.
for a little
You
bit
can
while
jump in.
you collect your thoughts. So another good example, I think, is back in like heavy hitters meta when playing into KO. There was kind of 2 major things to consider when the game was walking down. There was the reckless swing pulping kind of life total range where you have to decide, okay, uh, if I go below 2, I could die to either one of these cards, meaning the dominate or the 2 damage off the reckless. So I think that was the most face up assessment of like, okay, how am I ahead or behind, and do I need to take a risk? And I think a lot of people kind of play too safe in this regard, where if you assess the most recent list, I mean, this kind of takes a little bit of metagame knowledge to understand, are people running 1 reckless, 2 reckless, are people running yellow and red pulpings, this kind of thing. But even if you've just been paying attention throughout the game as to what kind of cards they've been playing and you're making your best guess, I think there are times where even if it's not the best math play, like you may lose the game automatically 20% of the time because they could just have this blowout card for you. You have to play for like the higher EV potential win, and maybe go down to this like life threshold that you can't go down to. There's obviously situations where you want to do the opposite, but I think it's more common for people to play more scared and say, "Oh, I can't go down this low." It also used to be a thing too when people play in old Bravo, where like, "Oh, I can't go down super low because what if he dominates?" But I think often it's better to make what you would say, quote unquote, is risky, and taking the damage going down to that lower life threshold to present the lethal back yourself. But in reality, you're giving yourself a better expected chance of winning because you then beat his average hand and only lose to like very specific cards. Was that a long enough ramble for you to collect your thoughts, Sam?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Okay. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Cody, too, because you like messed around with KO too. There's like, it came up especially in the mirror match, I think, where you got into these situations where you had to just accept that the game is kind of unfavored for me, so therefore I have to take this risk and put them on just average hand instead of very specific cards to win.
I think it's simpler than that actually with KO, because you can identify where you're at in a game on like turn 2, 3, 4, and there'll just be lines where you're like, you look at your hand and you're like, well, if I discard this card, I probably lose. If I discard this card, I probably win. This card doesn't matter if I discard, so it's like I'm safe there. How far behind am I to take this risk? Like, am I far enough behind where this risk makes sense to take? And then like sometimes the answer is no, I'm actually pretty far ahead. Why would I ever do this? And I would just like throw the game. And so like you don't make that play. But there's other times you're like, I'm kind of far behind. I either need to roll scabs, which is like one of the other outs for the deck, or I need to like make this play. And if I discard the wrong card, I discard the wrong card. But like you can make that play in like turn 3, and you do quite often, depending on what the matchup is. So like that's like a great deck example of you need to know how ahead or behind you are at all the time, because you have scabs right there, which is always like a potential. I might need to roll this if I'm too far behind.
Yeah, I agree. I've cast so many blood rushes intentionally with like a miss in hand, and like I'm convinced it was correct because I was behind.
But what do you think are like the hallmarks? I think the point of this topic is to say like, how does someone know whether they're ahead or behind to know to make those plays?
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of it. It's like threat density, but it's also understanding like one, I think like the typical expected output for the deck you're playing against. Like if you're playing against like a ninja like Fi, right? Once you're like behind, you're gonna take like consistent damage each turn. So you don't really have that like block out and hope they whiff comeback mechanic that works like against like Guardians or more like Zen can brick now. So it's like understanding what your opponent's able to do most turns, and then you have to factor in the threat density for like the bigger stuff. But I think like understanding what the end game looks like for the matchup you're playing is like super important. Like Guardians, let's say we're a ninja against a Guardian, you just can't get into the one health cycle where they're swinging their hammer. You just lose that game. So if you see the game like trending towards that, you might have to take a risky play like blocking your traverse early or than you want to like get them on the back foot and trying to keep them there and just hope you draw well.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like
I can give you a checklist of like ways that you can help identify.
You have to see the future. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Step 1 is you need to know the game plan for the matchup. I think it's incredibly difficult to know if you're ahead or behind with the highest degree of certainty. You can do it without a good game plan if you're good at all the other aspects, but having a game plan makes it really easy. Like if you know how this matchup normally plays into each other and like what the key points are in the matchup, and then it's pretty easy to see how close you are to completing the game plan for winning that matchup. Things like Victor are a very good example where you're like, I'm just trying to get the cards out of my deck with a reasonable health total while I chip them down with my weapon so that I can eventually Cosmic Awaken them at the end of the game. So are my Cosmic Awakenings still in my deck? Yes. Cool. Have I flipped a bunch of chi? Yes. Cool. Am I getting all the combo cards out? Yeah. Am I not at 5 health? Perfect. Like,
Yeah.
what equipment are up? Like, these are all like check marks on like where am I at in the game plan? Have they resolved or blocked with any pummels? Like, where are we at in the game? And depending on like how well you know that game plan will determine on like how one of the things you can use for ahead and behind. The other one is threat density. How many of their threats are they blocked with? How many of your threats have you blocked with or played for low value? How many are in second cycle that you might need to get to, or they might need to get to? If they still have all 3 command and conquers left, well, you should probably not be setting cards now. Like, that might be like an issue for your game plan. If you're like, I need a 5-card hand in order to win this game, to push enough damage, but they have all their command and conquers left. And then you have to, like, in order to think about if you can set that card or not, or if you should just play it on that turn, you need to know if you're far enough behind where you have to have a 5-card hand to win the game, or are you far enough ahead where you don't have to set that card to play the 5-card hand because you know they have all the 3 command and conquers coming up. Like, that's like another example of how you do that work. So you do that, and then you look at armor and you look at health. Those are like my next determining factors. And then the last part would be how you expect your opponent's deck to operate into you. So are they blocking everything you're doing? Are they running at you? You said Phi was a good example. Am I down 10 health? And then I look and see that they still have their helmet up. And I go, oh, I'm way far behind now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't be down 10 health against Phi. Why? They still have Mask of the Pouncing Links up. Because that's like guaranteed another 5 damage right there through their other hand. You're actually just like significantly far behind.
Now our game's over.
Or are you 5 health down, but their mask is down? Now you're like, I'm ahead. I'm actually way ahead in this matchup, even though I'm down 5 health. Like, these are vastly different things. So you need to take those into account. And then when you can compile all of that data together to know, and another thing is just experience. Have you played the matchup enough? Have you actually limit tested your testing where you go, I don't know if I'm behind or not right now. I'm going to play normal and see what happens. I don't know if I'm ahead or not right now. I'm going to play risky. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make these decisions. I'm going to not block. Or you're going to see how the game naturally finishes so that you can make an adjustment to that. So you need to limit test on how the deck operates. Then you can determine how risky you need to get. There's been games I've been in tournaments where I sit down, I'm like really far behind, and I'm like, you know what I need my opponent to do? Have an unfunctional hand next turn. If they have an unfunctional hand next turn, and I keep this hand and push, and then their hand sucks, I can win the game. And you know what? Sometimes their hand sucks and you win the game. And
that's always like
it
the
suck.
last ditch effort is like, oh, they're just going to draw a brick, obviously.
Yeah. And so like, but these are like, those are the points where you have to be able to make that decision instead of you're just blocking down to death where it's like inevitable that you're going to lose, right? And sometimes blocking down forever is correct, is how you come back into a game. But that's how you make those type of risky decisions. Sometimes it looks silly when someone's just like, I'll take it all and go to 2, and their opponent's at like 25, and they're just like, and then they have some big turn, and then they just die on the crackback, and you're like, why did you make that decision? And you're like, well, they were just hoping that they bricked. It was their only way they could win. They've played the game out, and their decision was, if I just block down and keep taking all this chip, I'll lose either way. Like, it won't matter. So I think those are some like good ways to immediately start working on trying to tell if you're behind or not.
Yeah, I just want to add to the game plan note really quick. So I think it's, like you said, it's about having your game plan optimized, like understanding your game plan fully, but then you have to recognize your opponent's game plan, just like understand what they're attempting to do. I just wanted to add that part to it.
Yep. And see how far they are in completing what their game plan should be against you.
What you think their game plan is. Yeah. And if you know, you can just ask them.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking of like some games where this was evident that were on stream to review. There was one I played in the Battle Hardened against Michael Fang. This was Icelander versus Oldham, matchup I talk about often as being one of my favorites, where like he's just smacking me around. I can see that his deck is red Glacial, red Thunderquake. It was like a common strategy at the time to just play these like super big attacks, make Icelander sweat from taking all this damage. And yeah, I basically go down 23-5, just taking 10 off of a Glacial, and basically saying, okay, if I block on this, I'm still not in a good spot, and I have a Insidious Chill with 3 counters and a red Ice Vein. So like by blocking, I'm now reducing the window I have to potentially use Ice Veins left in my deck, get chill counters off, and execute the game plan like you're describing. Right, the game plan is like chill with Ice Vein, strip cards from them, keep chipping in damage, and then eventually finish with a Emeritus off of Storm Striders, just a bunch of damage. So like the game kind of tells me that I'm behind right now, but the way that I'm going to win the game is just consecutively drawing Ice Vein after Ice Vein. So I have to play to that out, and having Ice Veins means when you play one, it leads into the second because they can't keep cards to come back at you. So rather than block out and basically give myself no way to win, I just have to like accept the fact that if he throws a second dominated red glacial, I'll probably just die. And the way I win is the top of my deck for the next few turns just rewarding me.
I mean, that happened all the time with Icelander.
Yeah, that's just how Icelander works. I was going to say.
The amount of times we'd have conversations would be like, okay, I'm going to go down 20 health to get this Ice Vein or this chilling out on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth it because I think we can still, I think that's how we win the game. And then just like, you get it on the board and then you're like, you draw a double Ice Vein. You're like, no blocks. Play the Ice Vein, send an Ice Vein. I got the next one. Can I keep going? And then you.
Yeah, Icelander is just the perfect example. I remember it was at like a ProQuest event or a ProQuest Plus, whatever, PTI event. Battle Hard, I don't know. But I was playing against Will, I think. And he was just like the nuts first 2 turns as Lexi. I'm playing Icelander. I'm down like 4 to like 40. And I'm like, this is fine, man. I'm just going to slam a channel this turn and then I'm going to draw Ice Vein, and I'm going to win. And then I actually did that. So it was like I optimized towards playing towards that because that's my only out and it just happened. But it's like recognizing that this is the only way you win the game.
I think
you
that's
can like
how,
make some micro decisions to like optimize around that.
That's how you can go like 11-2 or better in a tournament. Like you have to have some of
you have to steal a game, yeah.
You're getting lucky, but you're playing in a sense where you're allowing yourself to get lucky and capitalizing on the top of your deck rewarding you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually think this is why Enigma matchups have felt like they've gotten worse to play into. And it's actually like, not that Enigma has gotten any stronger than she was previously. I don't actually believe that. What the Enigma players have gotten a lot better at identifying how they win games and at what point they need to take the risks to slam their big like Maragai and big turns and start blocking them out or not blocking them out. And it's made Enigma feel like it's better than the deck was, 6 months ago, barring the Zen matchup, of course, right? But I meant just in general. And you see this like across many matchups, but like their ability to just be like, it's turn 2, I have to slam Maragai helmet now, go. If you break it, you break it. If you don't, you don't. Let's see what we do. But I have to get this turn off. And like, but they know that they need to do that now versus like, I'm going to set Maragai and then I'm going to naturally draw Chi and do the thing. And then I'm going to keep my helmet up for when I have Maragai up, or I have to protect it for a second round. Like it's just, they don't play that way anymore. And I think that's why you've seen the Enigmas do better and better and better. And matchups that you think feel good sometimes feel really hard is because they've starting to find those gaps where they can just be like, I just got to go now and see what happens. Right. And
yeah, I agree. I've noticed that too. Yeah. I have one more good same example. I don't know if you can still find it, but in my Worlds top 8 game from 2 years ago, it was a Phi mirror. And I think Phi is like the easiest way to do this because it's just math. Like, the expected range of damage they can output. You can calculate your damage in hand. But there's 2 interesting plays that came up, which was entirely based on me at least thinking that I understood how far ahead or behind I was at the time. One was like, and it gets called out on the stream and the commentators like get wrong the reasoning I did it. But I take like a kind of strange looking overblock line on like an attack for 4 with like no on hit. Or no, maybe there was an on hit. I forget what it was. But I like overblock by +1, giving up like my Shuko or something, which looks super strange. But I basically calculated in my head that like I'm like 3 to 4 points ahead at the moment, so I can give up this 1 point of value to play around Artivore, which would jump ahead the 4 points that I currently have. It was a snatch. That's what it was. I blocked 5 instead of 4 on it, where I had like a clean 4 block. So that was one. I thought I was enough ahead that I can afford to like give up equity as insurance, if that makes sense. And then towards the end of the game, there's a line where my opponent plays an engulfing flame wave, and I'm calculating that after giving up that point, I'm now like half a point to 1 point ahead. Like I'm barely hanging on. So I just can't block this card. It just has to miss, in my opinion, to win the game. Because when you block S5, you're giving up like at least a point per card. And he hits a Darnivore, and that's how I win.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Knowing when, I mean, I do this against Ira all the time. I'll just be like, I'm not blocking this. Like, this has to matter or not matter, but I need this to just not matter. And most of the time it will not matter, so I'm not blocking this. Like,
yeah,
you can draw.
Here's a good
Draw
example
your
too. Like the farther behind you get, the more like loose you can play because you just have to. It's like you don't got it. No blocks on your bonds. Oh, I took 14 and I lost my land. Oops.
Yeah. It's how like some of the really silly plays look. Like eventually you're just like, of course you have to block this bonds. They have a whole grip. And you're like, I need them to just not have the thing.
Yeah,
like
they're just gonna pass. They're gonna activate hand and pass.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great. But you do have to find those lines, right? Like you can't just assume your opponent's gonna like forget they have 3 cards in their hand. You have to find like some feasible line that can lead you to winning when you're behind like that. Like just activating hat instead of doing 2 reacts or something. I don't know.
Yep. Agreed. Okay. Anything else on this topic?
I think just being aware that this is something you should do should be pretty helpful. Like trying to think about during your games. Like whenever you're able to, pops into your mind, be like, oh, how far ahead or behind am I at this point? I think it's a good exercise.
Maybe also too, you could like take a mental note of the game state and then like discuss it with your opponent after to see like what their thoughts were. Like, did they feel like they were ahead or behind at this point? Maybe they don't remember, but if it's usually like a crucial like end game decision, then it could be interesting to hear their POV. Maybe they thought they were getting crushed and they're like, oh, I'm so glad that he made this super risky play, and then now it let me get back in the game when I thought I was losing.
Yeah, so the thing I want to highlight more that we didn't is that like when you do take these risks, like you got to be sure because this game like compounds mistakes and risks like crazy.
Yes. I had one of these games against at the first Pro Tour when I was playing Chain, and I was playing against Joe, and Joe and I are playing the match. It's a chain mirror, and it was like halfway through the game, and he came in with his like massive attack, and I went super low, and he looks at me because I didn't block anything. He looks at me, he's like, "Do you think you're ahead right now?" And I'm like, "I think I'm ahead right now." He's like, "How?" And then I did my play. It was like a big tome turn play. And he's like, okay, I can see why you thought you were ahead. And then on his turn, he played tome. And I was like, I was actually way behind. You're right. Like, it was like one of those moments where we're in the middle of the game. We're like working it out. It's like, well, yeah, if you don't have tome there, I'm super far ahead. But if you have tome here, then I'm, super far behind. But I just thought it was funny as even way back then. And it's something we do in testing is like asking like, are we behind or ahead here? How much ahead or behind here? But we're like doing it at Pro Tour, like at an actual Pro Tour, which is a good memory. Okay. Next, podcast questions. These are questions asked by premium members of our Discord. If you'd like to be able to ask questions on the podcast, vote on our upcoming hero poll, which I actually think closes tonight, for what we're going to be working on for the next month. The Yara list and sideboard guide should be coming out shortly. And I think right now Vincent is winning by like 1 vote. So
yes.
It looks like this next month we might be making a new Vincent deck with sideboard guide as well. Or if you would like to be able to submit VODs once a month, then look at our Majestic level. First question here from B-Nubs. I don't know, one of those. How does the collective team testing data get translated into game plans for each matchup? Do you guys keep a team testing spreadsheet you all add everything to, or is done more or less internally?
You want to take that, Cody? Well,
sure.
You use your discretion as how much you want to share.
We get in a big group and we talk about it.
Yeah, we used to do like spreadsheets, like our first cycle or two, like way back when the team started. It just, we found it to be more of a chore than useful. Like data gathering and like analysis is super useful. We have a couple like people who will do some nice deep dives on the team, like Dalton. Well, we don't track too much of our own data. I'd say it's more like we do that at the individual level and then we aggregate the information together.
Yeah, I think tracking like winning, losing type stuff is basically irrelevant. Yep. Usually what I'm tracking is like card performance. I think I've spoken about this on other podcasts before, but whenever I'm playing a test game, I'm always imagining when I draw a card that is something I want to test out, what if it's the other 4 cards I'm considering for that slot? And so then usually after the match, we have a spreadsheet of like all the potential cards that are not considered core. And then I just kind of rate by match, like into new, this card was a 8 out of 10. Into Zen, this card was a 4 out of 10. And I just kind of go based on the different matchups of which card I would have preferred it being. So not as much about data of like win losing, but just about how cards and game plans feel into the matchup. Like, am I presenting 69 cards into new? That was felt more effective than just a flat 60 kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it also depends on the deck that we're working on. Like how we built all of the game plans for Hatchet Dory, it was a completely different process than how we built them on Zen. I mean, like this last iteration of Zen, I was like, I can't beat Victor. Dan, how do you beat Victor? And you're like, I could beat Victor every time. And you're like, here you go. And I was like, okay, let me go double check that this works.
Well, Lucas said at first, I was like, we have no power cards. He's like, let's see if we can just set up Levels of Enlightenment Sacred Doctrine. I was like, yeah, this guy can't do anything. We just block until that's all we have. Let's try it. And I had to do it live at like a pro quest for like a win in. I was like, this worked great. We have a game plan.
Yep.
And you optimize it, obviously.
Yeah, let's go test, and then we optimize, and then we're like, okay, we need the 3rd Cosmic Awakening for stuff like this, and then, then you start optimizing after you find out it works. But Hatchet Dory was completely different. Hatchet Dory was like massive collaboration on every matchup and how everything works, and it was, a lot of like every other day communications on, hey, I was doing this and I found this that happens, and in this matchup we might want this, or there's this moment in these matchups that can be tricky, and it just like kind of depends on what deck it is, what needs to be worked on. But for the most part, we just use our words.
Yeah, I'd simplify by saying we operate on like to-do lists, and then those to-do lists warrant analysis and different tooling for whatever that to-do list item is. But like the way we do it means we also have to like know our teammates pretty well, because I apply like a different filter depending on who's feeding me information, if that makes sense.
It's also why Dan and I end up on the same list a lot, is because like I think we typically come to the same conclusions separately and then come together and are like very close on how we feel about the same thing, just like naturally. And then
we did start playing the game together. Like my day 0 was playing with you and Joe and like learning your fundamentals for Flesh and Blood. So that's probably a big factor.
Sure.
You've been indoctrinated.
Yeah. I want to be on Team Noah for one of these events though.
I do as well.
Always down. The problem is,
but I couldn't when you were on KO.
Yeah, you just kept playing KO, man.
You kept playing KO, and I'm never getting on that train because it was just wrong.
So we were on the train for a season, but
he was good at the start, and then the copium levels just kept rising.
Yeah, we couldn't shake you off of it.
Yeah.
But no, I thought your Viscerai was worth jumping on, but I was just pretty sold on what you were playing. Zen State was hell of a drug.
Yeah. Yeah. And Cosmic.
Yeah. A Cosmic Awakening, so especially.
Imagine playing blue cards.
They're great. Okay. Mista asks, what meta trends does the team predict for CC events at Memphis?
A lot of random ass decks.
Yeah. I think just in general, people play what they like. If people like the new heroes, they'll find ways to get the cards and they'll play them. If people feel really comfortable with their old deck and it doesn't seem like the new hunted heroes are going to be like a massive power spike, then they'll just play what they're used to.
It's also
talking. I was listening to something earlier about, I forget whether it was like him live streaming or pre-recorded, but he was talking about how Kano and like Wizard might make a resurgence because
Dude, you're like the third person to say this today.
Yeah.
In my life. So it's not looking so good on the
I hope everybody says it so that way
Wizards on the
it
down
becomes out in the world and as a known quantity, so then they get scared again and then they don't bring it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like Draconic equals red and then Wizard says, oh, if you
I think
have
that's
red,
valid.
you die.
That's such a funny dynamic though.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
think new heroes will be severely underrepresented. They will have very low adoption. The meta will primarily look exactly how it looked the last 2 months.
Yeah. Well, so like it's also the first calling event of a 2 calling weekend. So like no one cares like if they don't do well in this calling. I think it's gonna be like 5 to 10% of the field will like prep a deck like kind of intensely for the event, and the rest are just gonna bring whatever they feel like playing or whatever they know how
Yeah,
to play.
exactly.
Like I
That's
don't
what they were playing at Portland, like the same meta type.
yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
I don't think you'll see like any deck have like a huge share. I think it'll be pretty spread out. I'm sure, or it'll still be.
I think the one change would be like, since we do have Prague beforehand,
Mm,
if there's some deck that it's like this deck is 8 out of 8 spots in the top 8, I don't know, I mean it'd be impossible, right? But
If something's like
some deck just seems like
busted,
obviously
yeah.
super busted, then people will hop on the train.
isn't Prague limited?
That's what I'm saying. Like it would have to be 8 out of 8 people like drafting the same deck in top 8. But yeah, I'm saying like if they had like all the sealed conversion being like one hero and that hero just seemed like obviously super busted, then
That's right. We could have like a stubby 5 scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But even stubby 5 scenario wasn't super representative.
We never had a chance to be.
Yeah, there was like one battle hardened or something.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it was like
What
for
if
sure
people
going to be
like, this is their
50%
one
of the
event?
meta plus.
Okay.
That's not relevant.
Yeah.
It's going to be random decks, and yeah, if there's like a completely unbalanced new hero, then whoever can buy cards will play that.
Yep. Giant Steven asks, with about a month to RTN season, what decks are on your list to possibly play? Even knowing we don't have all the hunted spoilers yet.
I play Zen.
It depends.
It's RTN. Like I'm gonna get an invite with Zen, and then I'll probably play new hero.
Probably Zen. I think the new Arachne is something I really want to look at. I really want the Chaos Arachne multiple demi-hero thing to be good. Since most of the demi-heroes are just good by themselves. Like, you don't really mind which one you split into if you can discard a card and get +3 automatically on a bunch of different things is actually decently good. It just all of that hinges on if marking your opponent is actually something you can do for free or if it's really expensive or annoying to do. So I want to take a look at that. I think new should be on your radar because new might get new cards here. And then I really want Vincent to be good, but I don't trust yet.
That's fair. I think I should probably prioritize giving Phi LL points. I don't know if I've done that despite being the highest placing Phi at 3 back-to-back majors. So maybe I'll get on that list just so it's documented.
Oh yeah, Phi might be great. If Phi's
good. No, like surely I'll play one RTN with Phi.
There's no world where Phi can exist when Zen exists, right? Like Phi just like auto loses to Zen state token, right?
We'll see.
Yeah, I want to try a bunch of stuff. My plan is to like figure out what's good in preparation for London, right? Just using those seasons to like really figure out the CC meta. So I don't have any hero that I'm specifically going to play now because it's going to change a lot as heroes will be probably LLing week to week. So I might not even be able to play the same hero for the whole season.
That's right. Yeah, RTN is that's the issue. RTN is really Pro Tour London prep, so like playing Phi is pretty minus.
What if he's busted?
Unless it's the deck.
Assuming he's gonna Living Legend.
Yeah.
But if he's super busted, then maybe it's minus to play him, you know? You can't let the secret out.
Sure,
just minus regardless.
Fair.
Oh.
Let's see. Wardo77 asks, pineapple. Does it go on pizza or is it an abomination?
Top tier pizza topping.
What do you say, Cody?
I'm completely neutral on this topic.
Oh, okay. I'm also top tier.
If you like pineapple, put it on there. I will eat it.
Okay.
If you don't like pineapple, don't put it on there. Don't eat it. I don't know.
The one problem is though, is like pineapple is one of those things that once it comes in contact with the pizza, it's not like a topping you can pick off because like the juice kind of gets in there.
Sure.
I can see why if people don't like it, it's just like a complete buzzkill. But my problem is people think you have to put ham when you put pineapple, but like ham is like tier 3 meat, like both chicken, bacon, steak. Like,
yeah, I think bacon's
all
just like strictly better.
So why do you subscribe to like needing to put ham when you have pineapple? You can just put like.
Well, the saltiness is nice, right? That's the whole point.
Well,
but bacon's like saltier and tastier.
It's just better. Like, why would you ever use ham when you could use bacon?
It's strictly better.
It's a better card.
I
had one pie where it was both ham and bacon and pineapple.
That sounds great. Sweet. I mean, adding more is always better. But
I just don't know what world these people live in where they're only ordering one pizza for multiple people. Like, I just haven't existed in that world, like where I've only ordered a single pizza for multiple people that are going to eat on it to ever have to like deal with. I don't like
Oh, like group
pineapple.
decision.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, well, we'll get a pizza with no pineapple then. Like, you could have that one. Like, get this pizza with pineapple for the people who want pineapple. Like, it's just like never been an issue. Because I can't remember the last time in my life where we're like, we would like one pizza to split, please. Like, that's so long ago.
I think this person just wanted to know if we like pineapple on pizza, though.
No, I was talking about Noah's, where he's like, once it comes in contact with the pizza,
I
like,
see what you're
pizza is
saying.
now pineapple.
Yeah,
but like, in which situation would you have to eat a pineapple pizza if you don't like pineapple?
There was a situation. The very last time I had pizza, I don't know if you can even call it pizza, but in Chicago, where they just serve you like it's like this thick.
Yeah.
That's where I could barely finish a slice. I mean, granted, I had like infinite hot pot beforehand, so I was already full. But dessert pizza being like gigantic, we actually had like one pizza to share with like 6 or 7 people. So that would be one situation. But a normal pizza, I agree with you completely. A pizza's for one person.
Yeah, but for that pizza, the pineapple you can just take off and not influence it. Like take a huge scoop out of it, you still have like a giant slice, right?
That's fair.
Like any of the contact areas.
I was not part of the ordering process, and it took like an hour for them to make it. So I don't know what kind of sorcery was afoot.
Okay, Renzo asks, what decks will be gone by Nationals? By Nationals?
By Nationals?
Nationals is very far.
In June?
Was it 2 episodes ago? I think
every Mystic hero.
No, New will still be around.
Really?
Yeah. New should still be around.
But through Arcane and ProQuest? Oh, wait. Before or after Nationals? Before?
Yeah, by Nationals.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So I think it's the ones we said. It's going to be Zen, Viscerai, Enigma, for sure.
Probably Fi.
Maybe
maybe
Dash
Fi.
IE. Maybe Dash. Maybe Azalea. Actually, probably Azalea.
Oh, Dash IE, I forgot that hero. What does she need?
But
4
probably
points?
Azalea as well. She needs like 200 points, 150 points.
I would say that there'll be 5 heroes that are legal today that are not legal in Nats.
Sure. Grog, how do you choose who to recruit as team members?
Well, this is a better question for y'all too. I'm not really.
Yeah, we've touched on this before. Currently, we kind of just haven't been doing that. I think I wish I knew the date. We've had the same squad for like, I don't know, at least 6 months now, right?
Well, unless you count Joe's edition as like a new timeline.
I don't.
Then it's like a year.
Yeah,
he was like too close to us already.
Over a year, yeah.
Yeah, it was like whenever Naive and Jason were the last 2 people to join.
Yeah. Yeah, so like
for however long they've been on the team, we have not changed members since then.
Yeah, maybe we'll deep dive this another time, but the like social dynamics and just like the dynamics in general and like maintaining a team like vibe and atmosphere and people working together is like very challenging and delicate. So like introducing more people to disrupt the balance of what you currently have when it's working is tricky.
And I think all of us are still like dedicated to the game as well. I can see like recruiting new people if some people have like other commitments in life where they have to like step away. Okay, you recruit new people or other people reach out wanting to join and you entertain the conversation more. But when like the whole squad is at the same commitment level and like active playing, then it's just if some super niche person comes around that fills a gap on our team and would work with our team dynamic, then that would be something. I mean, I'm just
no. That's what I was gonna say too. Like right now, I think the answer is like we add people based on how they fit needs that we have and how they fit with the existing group or how we think they fit. Or like not interested in adding people, but it's like I don't know. It's like so hard to maintain this dynamic, and we have it pretty good right now. So it's like you have to like really be careful with considering disrupting that.
Typically we add people by how are they going to benefit the team, which I think is important, which I often I just talk to people about joining teams or whatnot. They're like, oh, I often hear how the team would benefit them, but like we're at the point now where that's like, how are you going to benefit the team for a lot of people that we recruit? which I think is like an important thing to think about. Like, what do you provide to like a team atmosphere that makes it more beneficial for you to be on it if you're looking to join any team. I think that is an important thing to know, or at least think about. But most of our recruitment has just been people that we know or played against or interacted with at events, etc. Like, I don't even remember how Noah got in the team.
He was part of the naive wave, right?
Yeah, it was Fino requested.
Finos was pushing for a while, and every time I'd be like, "Oh yeah, he keeps juicing me. Let's get him."
Yeah.
I think he has good ideas, and then
it was like
eventually we're like, "We need
ago.
this many people," and Noah was like top candidate.
Yeah, that wasn't a complaint. I just like didn't remember. I had because I knew it was not from my side. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Stackswell asks, how do you beat Ira? She is so good at FAB math on a turn-to-turn cycle basis. What decks or strategies are good against her?
Well, Viscerai just smokes her.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward, I think, right? Like, he calls it out. She's very good at FAB math. So you need decks that break FAB math, like Viscerai, who scales like crazy when you have these auras out, or like Zen with Traverse. You just go like one turn cycle ahead.
Yeah, Ira actually plays a lot into what we were talking about earlier of like, I think you actually mentioned Ira specifically, right? Where they have like 2 cards already in hand and they present an attack where they're threatening a mask draw. It's like, okay, this card just like doesn't matter. So I think any deck that can allow Ira to continuously play out her whole hand every turn, and just eventually she will reach that like brick factor of her deck, where her math, while the cards she's actually casting on her turn provide good math, she's unable to use every card in her hand, so it actually ends up being like poor math. And then when she blocks, if you, like in the Viscerai example, present Infinite Arcane, she now can't get the great value off of cards like Flick Flack being worth like 9, like 4, not 9, but like 4, blocking 4 into blocking 5. If you're just like presenting one big attack with Infinite Rune Chance, it's like you just ignore her math.
I think so the mask trigger is really interesting as Ira. There's actually a world where you're probably never supposed to stop mask trigger unless it's profitable for you. Due to the fact of the abundance of blues that they run in their deck, and they're all terrible to arsenal.
The blues are so bad.
So there's like a world where 40% of their deck's unarsenalable. So you would only have to block in a way where it's profitable, that them drawing a card is only good, like 1.5% of like 1.5 value worth each time. So there's like a world where that becomes a strategy into Ira. It's not very fleshed out. It's like, but it is an idea that if some high percentage of the time their card cannot be arsenaled, then you probably shouldn't be blocking mask target if your value of not blocking is over a certain threshold, due to how those work. But I would just say I need to play against good Iras or good Ira decks, because I just like smoke this deck every time I play it. Like, it's just like not remotely been close or good. They have like a couple of rounds where I'm like, ooh, this deck's good. And then I'm like, oh no, it's not. Here's a real turn. Like, never mind. But I've been playing a lot of Zen and like a lot of other decks like Enigma and Zen and Viscerai and New, like, and all these decks just feel like really good into Ira.
The other thing about Ira too is you have to think about how she executes good math. She needs to keep at least 2 cards.
Yeah.
So like if you're just doing any game state where she doesn't really want to have 4 cards, but she needs to keep 2 cards. So if you just like put her in situations where she either has 4, 1, or 0 cards, then
she's like Victor. Yep.
Yeah. Then her math is just not as good.
Yeah, I feel like she has to be at her best when like her disruption matters, right? Like these 2-cost attacks coming in for 7. So I'm guessing maybe that's like the biggest struggle you're seeing, in which case I would just slam like 4 power D reacts and hope it's not CNC that you have to deal with. If you have block cards, they seem gas against her, right? Like Haunting Rendition? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. You can like discard it on the second Kodachi if you...
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to understand, like Cody's saying, the issues more. I've been very unimpressed with Ira.
I have also, but I think that's just because I haven't played against good Iras. Like, I would 100% believe if there's some good Iras that are like smoking people and they're like, how do I beat this? And like, it just hasn't been something we've explored a lot personally. just because we're kind of taking a break right now to recharge.
I just don't know how you pick up Ira when Zen exists.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's like a CYB IRA angle or something where that's like an added factor that makes
That's just
training
not
them
been the
with cards.
popular ones. Like the Shoma's list, I think, is like the closest we have to like a good Ira deck.
Mhm.
And it's just like the standard like 2 for 6 go again, shenanigans, and he just played it really well. But like I don't know, I play Zen. It's not good enough. I don't know. It's hard to help when it's just like play Viserai, play Zen, play Enigma. And then you can probably just ignore the hero until I have new data. I think new is also, when I've played it into Ira, been really strong. Like it just felt great to play new into it because like their attacks suck. So they're like 1, a 2, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take 3. I don't care. I'm new. And then they're like, other thing, I'm like, D-react. Oh yeah, yes. This is exactly what I want. 3 card hands for the whole game is new. Let's go. Like this is like the world I want to live in. So for new is
Their
also
equipment also just like
good.
sucks. Like they don't actually have equipment to absorb on hits. It's all like blade breaks.
Yep.
I mean, they have the shoes that block 1, but that's basically it.
I also think it's important when Ira is doing the thing that deals damage, you should probably not take the damage. What I mean by that is when they're playing like their, what is the 1 for 5 go again? If you banish a 1 power from your graveyard, looking for scrap.
Yeah.
Like when they do their looking for scrap, blah, 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 another attack, like a big long chain, you should just give them your whole hand.
Yep.
Like don't let them, this also applies to new. It's a secret that people don't know about. Don't let looking for a scrap hit if new is swinging it at you. Don't let them get damage. Just like block it so that they don't get a health lead on you. It's like you're like, okay, I'll give you my whole hand this turn when they play looking for scrap. That's like been every single deck I play. That has been like one of my metrics. It's just like, oh, you play looking for a scrap. Here's my whole hand. I'm not just taking free damage to like hope that you don't have disruption on the back end. And like Ira has so few big turns that push damage that when they have that big turn, just put your whole hand in front of them and say, show me you can use a 4 card hand again next round. And then they pretty much often can't. And they didn't get the free damage that like they really, really need.
And what you're saying is like if she went Kodachi looking for scrap, you would just like block 2 cards and looking for scrap and be prepared to throw 2 more cards into whatever the follow-up is.
Yep. And sometimes they lead like looking for a scrap, and then they're like they do another 1 cost, and they might do this and then a 0. Like they have like a couple of big long turns, but they usually are scar for scar, looking for scrap. They involve some type of these go again cards to exist. And when they are doing one of those turns, then that's when I'm just willing to give them my whole hand. Because like I'm not just going to take 9 from them, because like they really need you to take that damage to try and get you in Kodachi lock area. Just like new really wants you to take 5 from looking for a scrap when they're playing looking for, like, please take the 5, like, because they're super happy about that. It's the same with like any assassin. They really want you when they throw the dinky go again cards. They really want you to take that damage because that's how they chip you down. So cool. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Wow. I can't wait to play Flesh and Blood again, but
Yeah,
I have to
see
save
y'all
it
in the
because
new
I'm really excited. Okay, bye.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope
7
here, but
What we
envelope
could do
in
here is go ahead
darkness.
and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of envelope and darkness.